Now I would like to introduce our next important program element. We will have a panel discussion. The topic is challenges and directions of development for the global air cargo market in 2020. So 2020 was an interesting year for all of us in the air cargo as well, and a challenging year. Opportunities in Central Eastern Europe and at Budapest Airport. The panel will be moderated by Kam, our CCO, and let's give the field to Kam.
Thank you, Joseph, and welcome back, everybody. And thank you for the presentation from Brendan. I found it very, very insightful. So, as with any panel, just please give me an opportunity just to introduce our esteemed guests. I'll be joined by 4 people. Firstly, Rob Veltman, who's the Vice President Cargo Europe for Qatar Airways. Welcome, Rob. Looking forward to the interaction. Also, Chris Nielen, who's a Sales Vice President Africa Middle East for Cargolux. Welcome, Chris.
Morning.
Hakan Lokman Yükselt, who's a Regional Cargo Director Eastern Europe for Turkish Airlines. Welcome, Hakan. And then
Good morning. Hello.
Morning. And then welcome Mr. Hyun Min Jungot, the manager of the Korean Air Budapest office for Korean Air. So welcome, Mr. Jung.
Morning.
Morning. So we've had some, I guess, some insights in terms of what's happening, not just in Budapest, but from a global perspective, as you just saw from Brendan's presentation. Questions, and maybe if I can take it in order of the panelists, maybe starting with you, Rob. It's been a challenging year for our industry, as we mentioned, even though there's some industry shifts and paradigm shifts are taking place and some industries are booming. But how has it been for Qatar Airways? What is your assessment of the situation in this COVID climate, if we call it that?
Okay, I think it was a challenging year so far for all airlines. We were confronted with last minute changes of countries opening up, closing, all kind of infrastructural restrictions, etc. So I think it was for us key to find out where we could still fly, under what conditions. We are, of course, a mixed carrier. We have a big passenger fleet and a cargo fleet, and we had to deploy our network actually according to market needs. So we had to balance our regular schedule versus needs from the market to operate charters for PPE equipment, etc. And on the other side, we had to mobilize our own staff, right, working from home with all the difficulties around it. And also on the operational side, so due to the last minute changes in schedules and operating, for us the main challenge was to have all the operational people everywhere to make sure we could handle the flights, talks with our partners whether they could still handle all the flights. And yeah, what we've seen is that many markets still had cargo, but either it couldn't reach the airport, so we had only one-way traffics. So yeah, what do? We're there to make money as well, so we had to adapt to that. There were markets that were underserved because predominantly they were previously served by belly lift, and there we had huge opportunities to fly with our freighters, but also with we call it PAX freighters, right? So passenger flights that can take cargo in the belly hold. So yeah, we actually had to redo our schedule almost on a daily basis, and that kept us really busy. And then also taking into account that we still had to make money, right? And I think for us, the most important thing was that our staff was safe and sound, right, in the whole situation, and that we could offer our customers a reliable product, both in the air and on the ground. And that is not so easy in these days.
Thank you for that. Those insights were very, very interesting. So, and if I turn with the same question to you, Chris, how is your assessment of the situation from Cargolux?
Welcome. Now, when the epidemic broke out, factories in China closed after Chinese New Year or stayed closed. So that really caused an imbalance of the flow of goods. And as the virus moved westwards, also restrictions, travel restrictions and lockdowns happened, but it also brought forth a surge of PPI goods from the Far East into Europe. So that was initially our focus, really on this relief flights and relief goods. The same as what Rob said, we also had a challenge operational and with our staff. From one day to another, we sent everybody home to do homework. That worked out extremely well. Although it was just an overnight action. And after the initial phase, when the lockdowns got a bit loosener, we returned and we have seen normal goods coming back, the normal commodities, the traditional commodities. However, with the lack of belly capacity, we've been adapting to our customers' needs, operating additional flights on certain routes, but also forced due to operational restrictions and local measurements to stop flying on certain routes, which was a challenge in itself. And the situation at the moment, we see the figures in Europe rise again. So that will bring again challenges with them on an operational point of view, the handling of cargo, but we are also sending our people home again, so people will start working from home. Luckily, we know it has proven to work, but unfortunately it has been necessary again throughout Europe to have people working from home again. We are seeing again also PPE coming out of Asia into Europe. The demand is picking up again. And unfortunately, that's not a good sign, because that means we need them here because the virus is picking up. So on one hand, it's good for the business, but we prefer to fly our traditional commodities at the moment, to be quite honest.
Thank you, Chris. That's a very good overview as well. And I think as whether you refer to it as a second wave or a hangover from the first wave, it doesn't really matter. I think you touched a very good point, an important point, that cases are rising. But hopefully everyone on the panel, and I guess in the audience as well, is aware that we've managed the first time and we've learned. Hopefully we've improved and we're more resilient and we can react in a similar way. But certainly from our airport's perspective, this is our thoughts on the situation. Home working is becoming a norm and it's becoming an integral part of how we react. But it does present challenges which both Rob and Chris have highlighted, which is how to respond and react quickly when all your assets and your resources and people are at home. But that's an interesting outcome, I think, of the situation. So, okay, thank you for that, Chris. And then how about from a Korean perspective, Mr. Jung? How has the situation been for your business during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. Like other airlines, Korean Airways also have very difficult time due to Corona-19 season. First of all, Korean Air got some support from Korean government because we have some financial situation is not good due to Corona season. Also, about 70% of our all staff is doing home working due to Corona season, and this is to reduce the cost regarding salary and the other staff. And we have a very difficult time during this season, and like other airlines, we are focusing on three strategies. First of all, like other airlines, Korean Air also increase cargo capacity, such as changing the passenger aircraft to cargo aircraft. I mean that according to some press and some document, our mechanic staff repair the passenger aircraft. I mean, remove all the passenger seat and change it to cargo aircraft, and we change it to Boeing 777 passenger flight to some kind of small cargo aircraft, and we are willing to increase our capacity. Second, we are focusing on high yield shipment. Due to reduced capacity because due to Corona season, normally the passenger aircraft cannot be operated very openly. So the belly cargo space is very tight, and due to this space situation, we focus on high yield shipment such as pharma and electronic shipment from Korean big companies such as Samsung Electronics and SK Innovation. So we are continuously have a good cooperation with Korean company, and also we are targeting some high yield shipment. Lastly, this is our long-term plan, but according to sorry, wait a minute. Last of all, according to IATA expect that long-term plan, 15 billion dose of vaccine is needed for COVID-19, and 8 billion will be provided by air operator. This means that about 65,000 tons, and the volume is similar with 900 flights of Boeing 747 freighter. And we are not sure, but we expect that we can have a vaccine for COVID-19 within 2 years. We think that this is very positively thinking, but anyway, we expect that about the vaccine will be produced, and most route of vaccine will be from Europe to Asia and Africa. The Asia bound will be for China and Korea and Japan. And this is subject to Hungary, but we heard that there are some global pharma company in Hungary also, such as Gedeon and Teva. So it will be a good chance to Budapest Airport also. And lastly, even though Korean Air got a difficult decision, but according to IATA carrier tracker, from January this year to July, Korean Air ranked PIPS airline according to CTK performance, but our 8K decreased 28% compared with last year due to Corona season. So finally, this is our conclusion that the capacity and volume is also important to Korean Air, but to survive in this hard situation, Korean Air will try to best for high revenue cargo such as pharma shipment and other electronic shipment of Korean company. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jung. I really appreciate those insights as well. And I think you also demonstrate that your business has had to adapt and evolve to the changing in commodities and what's happening. Interesting observations you make about the vaccine. If I understood you correctly, I think you said 8 billion vaccines would take 900 747s, if I understood that correctly, which is a phenomenal effort, of course. And I think everyone, it's not on one of my questions, maybe yours, you will take it later, but I think this is going to be one of the big industry shifts in terms of everyone's going to be trying to get a piece of that pie in terms of vaccine logistics. So it'd be quite interesting to see how that plays out. So thank you again, Mr. Jung. Last but not least, I should have come to you earlier. I apologize, Hakan, but as I say, save the best till last. So Hakan, how do Turkish Airlines see the present situation? How have you responded? And I think you're on mute, Hakan, if I can ask you to take yourself off mute.
Thank you, Kam. At Turkish Cargo, at the beginning of COVID-19, we lost almost 60% of our belly capacity. You know, we have passenger and freighter solutions for our customers, and suddenly, just at the beginning of COVID-19, we suddenly lost our 60% of belly capacity. But we immediately put in place our cargo-only passenger flights using around 40 passenger wide-body aircraft starting from 20th of March, which is just after the pandemic starts. Only 1 week, 10 days later, we immediately aligned with the market. We adapted ourselves very quickly, and as of 20th of March, we started our regular cargo-only passenger flights. Let's say freighters. And our team quickly developed flexible and efficient solutions in order to keep the effects of corona pandemic as low as possible. And we operated during that, in June, for example, we operated over 1,100 flights using our freighters and passenger aircraft, and forwarded safeguard the supply of hygienic and medical equipment, especially. And while overall air cargo market declined, we increased our global freight ton kilometer market share around 5%. And in Eastern Europe, in this region, we increased our both tonnage and revenue as well. Not only revenue, but also tonnage we have increased. As Turkish Cargo, we have been contributing and keeping air cargo flow. Even during these difficult times, the most important indication of this is we have recently established our regional directorate office in Budapest, here in Budapest, and I'm newly appointed to this position. And officially, I have started my role as of September 1st. Even during these difficult times, we are keeping investing to the industry. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Hakan. Also, some very, very useful comments coming out of your answer there, particularly converting passenger aircraft into freighters for the sake of getting more capacity to and from, I guess, the supplied area of China to the rest of the world. And I think many airlines were doing that we saw. And also you made another good point about the growth in business. So even though the world has been facing a pandemic, I think the trend from most of you is that you've adapted and you've optimized it and you've taken advantage of the situation positively. I'm sure for none of you it was easy because none of this situation has been easy, but I think you've taken advantage of the opportunities that exist. And I think that bodes well for our industry going forward. And I think the last point that you made as well, Hakan, about your personal relocation to Budapest means that you see it as a long-term investment, a long-term opportunity. And even as you said, you know, that your volumes in this region are increasing year on year. Which also it reflects the positive sentiments about this region, which you're all aware of. I've got 3 or 4 other questions that I want to get to, but before I go to them, we had one that was posed earlier in the chat. It's about what we think about the increasing railway solutions that are emerging around the world. Do you see them as strong competitors for air cargo? Of course, especially in China, but or in your network where you see them. And perhaps if I can start with this one with Chris. What's your assessment of that? I know it's a last-minute question, but
no worries.
You've identified that as a threat.
It is, of course, another mode of transport which is can be used and is used by our customers. If you look at the railway solution compared to air freight and sea freight, we believe it is more a competitor for sea freight. The time it takes air freight is still 2 to 2.5, up to 3 times as fast as by rail. However, rail is, I believe, it is 15 days less than sea freight. So I think for sea freight, it is more of a competitor. On the other side, what I've heard, but as I said, I'm not a specialist on the rail freight part, is that it is a challenge to get the trains back into China because of the imbalance of the flow of goods. So that's a challenge they have on that side. We, of course, as well. But it's a bigger challenge for the rail solution than for air freight solution.
Okay, thank you. And then the same question for you, Mr. Jung. How do you see the growing emergence of the freight rail network? Is it a threat?
I think the railroad connection between China and Europe bound is really big, strong competitor. As far as I know, there are some forwarding agent in Hungary. I mean, the Korean forwarding agent. They already use the railroad from China to Budapest. They say that the transit time is more shortened due to the development of technology. The railroad is more faster than sea freight, and the rate is very cheap. So especially due to Corona season, the air freight industry is not good for the long-term plan, but I think the sea rail road connection between China and Europe has some strong ability regarding the rate and connection time. So I think it will be a strong competitor with the airline industry, and we should check our sustainability way. I think that, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jung. So you see them as less of a competitor, or you see them as more of a competitor than Chris indicated, which is an interesting perspective. And the same question applies to you then, Hakan. How does Turkish view this emergence of the rail network for freight transportation?
Actually, yes, for us it is a little bit competitor for air freight. For us, the rail freight, because still we have many more products to be transferred from A to B under the time sensitivity very quickly, because we are talking about air freight, which is around 48, 72 transit time needed. So it can affect air freight very less, in my opinion. Still, we have many other opportunities in terms of products to be provided to our customers.
Okay. Thank you, Hakan. Yeah, so interesting perspective as well. And last by no means least, Rob, how do Qatar Airways cargo view the emergence of rail? Do you see them as a threat or an opportunity to cooperate?
Well, I think it's a natural development, especially the automotive industry is using these trains, right, from China into Europe. You need, I have a history in rail freight as well. You need long distance travel with, a large quantity of goods. So it's less suitable for, small shipments in containers and stuff like that, because you don't have the flexibility from point A to B, to get off of the rail. So it's a business segment that competes with either sea freight or air freight. It can have a little bit more transportation time, and by organizing this, of course, you can cut costs a lot, but you need to have your planning in very well in order. And I think, in general, the air freight market also prospers from a lot of companies that cannot plan their goods very well, or have such high value goods that they don't want to use air freight or rail freight. So yes, it will take some of our market away, because we all know in peak season especially that if these big flows come on the market and our colleagues in sea freight cannot move it in time, that used to be cargo for air freight, right, for charter movements and stuff. And yeah, partly this is taken away by rail freight, of course. But on the other side, there's a lot of opportunities in air freight where in the past things were moving by ocean, and they're now moving by air freight because of the whole e-commerce model around it. So you lose certain segments, but you also win certain segments again. Think about the garment industry that is changing collections every 2 to 3 weeks. You cannot use ocean for that. So that's a huge opportunity for air freight. So on one side, you will lose a bit to these transportation modes, and on the other side, the market is asking for new transportation modes as well. So yes, it is competition, but you need to look at the whole market.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I think that will be, I guess, a determining factor to some extent, which is the speed goods are needed. And I think the e-commerce arena, if we call it that, is something which is much more immediate than days gone by, where we were prepared to wait a bit longer. So, and I guess people are happy to pay a premium. But let's stay with the e-commerce view for the time being, because I know it's something that's facing our industry now. It's something that we're all talking about. It's something that we're all doing. We're responding. I think we're responding more than being proactive is my perspective on it. But some of you are probably more advanced. So let's take e-commerce as a totality, but bring it to today's conference. How do you see Budapest as a possible center or hub for Chinese e-commerce distribution? Is it something you've looked at? And I'll give that question maybe firstly to let's go to Mr. Jung. Do you
Yes.
see that? Yeah.
Yes. I think Budapest Airport have a potential regarding the possible center hub for Chinese e-commerce shipment, but we should focus on one problem. One problem is that the trade dispute between USA and China government. As you know that Mr. Donald Trump do not like Mr. Xi Jinping of China government, and they, this is just my private opinion, but the USA government make many regulation about the China government and China companies such as Huawei. For example, Korean Air's main customer is Huawei from China to Budapest and Eastern Europe. But due to this dispute between China and USA government, the shipment has gone. The shipment is forwarded by not air freight but sea freight. So I think the dispute between USA and China should be solved too. Then Budapest Airport can be a hub center in Eastern Europe. Also, I think Budapest Airport has a big competitor. I think that it is Vienna Airport, because Budapest and Vienna is very close, very area, and this is for Korean companies case, but most Korean forwarding company and Korean big company wants to Vienna, because Vienna already have some connection with customer and freighter and the forwarding agent. They have good relationship and good forwarding network. So the forwarding agent and customer in Korea do not want to change from Vienna to Budapest. So I think to be a good strong sustainability in Budapest, then Budapest should have more strong ability compared with Vienna Airport. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jung. Yes, some important points. Of course, this shouldn't turn into any kind of political discussion, but I think you made some very important points about the reality at the moment between the tensions between the US and China, and the domino effect that has on logistics, I guess. But I'm happy to hear that you see the opportunity here. But of course, we need to be mindful of Vienna and the competitive approach that they can bring. But as we all know, Budapest is a far better location than Vienna. I just put that in there as a plug. So, but let me give the same question now to Hakan. How do you see the Budapest's opportunity to be an epicenter for Chinese e-commerce distribution?
Thank you, Kam. Actually, Budapest indeed can be a main hub for e-commerce traffic, especially for the CEE region. And because of the catchment area, of Budapest, using this opportunity, Budapest indeed can be main hub for e-commerce within this region, and also thanks to the tracking catchment area. And recently you invested a lot to your infrastructure in Budapest Airport. So thanks to this, we can all together use this opportunity to make Budapest as a hub for e-commerce. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakan. And I think we share those beliefs and values, of course. And I think it's an opportunity for everyone who's based here and even new entrants to try and leverage that together and try and get more of this pie. So let me ask the same question to you, Rob. How do Qatar Airways see the opportunity for Budapest to be a part of this e-commerce opportunity as a hub?
Okay, like also Hakan said, I think the infrastructure is there, although you need to be aware that moving e-commerce is a challenge on the ground, right? With all the lots of loose pieces that come in. It's a bit of different freight than the normal traditional general cargo. So our handling agents should be prepared for that. That's one. I think, with our schedule connecting to Budapest Airport, we're well positioned to cater for this market segment. I think that the current e-commerce flows, you can split them into the Alibabas of this world and the Amazons that are looking for own capacity. They're taking ACMIs and stuff like that. They use their huge sorted centers, which we all know in which airports those are right now. It helps, of course, to tie in these kind of companies to get the flows into Budapest. I'm not sure what the latest status is on that. But I think you also need to take into account the imbalance of flows. So you see a lot more e-commerce coming to Europe than going out of Europe, and I think that is the biggest challenge. So if you put a lot of capacity into Budapest, but you don't have so much outbound air freight to go out, and you always need to position an aircraft somewhere else, which is at cost, right? So, and that makes whether you're competitive with other airports or not, moving, same kind of goods, and maybe having a bit of a different infrastructure. So for us, it's more like where the e-commerce customers want us to go, and we can balance the flows, we will also operate. And I think, especially on the ground, and I've seen the new facilities at Budapest Airport, they look really nice. But we also see developments where other airports are really building dedicated e-commerce, infrastructure, which is a little bit different, of course. So it also depends on what your own strategy is to attract these kind of customers.
Thank you, Rob. So some very good sound bites there as well. I think, yes, there's an opportunity, but I think everyone's chasing a bit of this, and there's a wider infrastructure considerations that need to be taken into place, which I think we'll all be mindful of. Okay, so the same question now for you, Chris, from a Cargolux perspective. How do you see things on the e-commerce platform for Budapest?
Yeah, very, very positive. I believe Budapest became more and more important in the last couple of years, and has strengthened its position with the new cargo terminal. We fly where our customers want to fly, and if we've seen that in the last few weeks, we have been increasing our flights into Budapest. There's a lot of e-commerce on board, so that shows that our customers are happy and pleased with Budapest with not only the handling but also the catchment area for the region. So based on that, I think Budapest is on the right way, and that with your new terminal, it's liked by our customers. That they want Budapest as a hub in Europe. So I think you guys are doing a great job and are on the right track.
Thank you very much, Chris, and we hope so too. And it's only through collaboration and working together that we can represent these opportunities to the markets where the demand comes from. So it's something we keep an eye on. I have a related question now from one of the audience, from Danny Duan, concerning Eastern European e-commerce. It's booming, but it depends very much on the demands, I think, which you all touched upon. And the relevant question is, what service and cooperation with Hungarian customs do you think could help improve this e-commerce cargo opportunity in Budapest? Do you see it as a barrier, and if so, what would you enhance from a Hungarian customs perspective to help facilitate more e-commerce distribution here?
Now, from my point of view, I'm not too familiar with the specific Hungarian customs, but with e-commerce, it is all about speed, and their customs is vital that you have a quick transfer and a quick throughput, and that is vital for your hub in Budapest, because if customs would, or due to customer requirements, there would be delays, and in other nearby airports, customs would be faster, or you don't have this problem, it could work out negative for Budapest. Okay.
And I think this is just trying to get a perspective in terms of using your experience globally in terms of whether there's something different that we can have, but thank you. What about you, Mr. Jung? Any enhancements that you would like to see from customs authority? We believe the cooperation is very good with them because they get it and they want to help this country develop more in terms of import and export. So is there anything you would like to see done differently? And I think you're on mute still. No, I'm not now. Now we can hear you. No, you're on mute now. Mr. Jung, if I can ask you to take your...
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I agree with the idea of Mr. Chris Nielsen, and I think the Hungary custom have good relationship with Budapest Airport, and sometimes Korean customer and Korean company send e-commerce shipment from by our operator, and I think the speed, the time of transit, and the speed, the transit time is really fast. And the most important thing of the e-commerce cargo is speed. So Hungary customs have good relationship, but I think for more shipment for Eastern Europe, Hungary custom support Budapest Airport, then it will be a good opportunity for Hungary and Budapest Airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Jung. And what about you, Hakan? Any thoughts on what could be done differently?
Actually, I can point out two topics in regards to customs process in Budapest Airport. Maybe faster clearance time, faster clearance, and also digitalization can be focused here in Budapest. That's it from my side. In general,
okay.
I mean.
Okay. And I think these are very important topics that we're already working on, I think, on the digitalization perspective, and it should be a good opportunity. And Rob, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of, if you have some insights in terms of the current regime of customs, or anything, any best practices you've seen at other airports that we could look at working together with customs on?
Yeah, I'm not the subject matter expert on customs issues in Hungary. I think what also Chris said and the others, it's important that customs is open 24/7, right? There's many airports, of course, where customs is not always fully open during weekends, and that is delaying cargo. You need to compete with those airports where those facilities are always there, and where cargo can move quickly, because indeed speed is of utmost importance for e-commerce. So as long as that is guaranteed, and you have the right messaging in place, right? Because also there, you know, to get the right information, post or pre-arrival of the flight, and that it all works smoothly with our ground handling agents together. I think those are the real key issues that you need to look at. But specifically for Hungarian customs, I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. As I said, that was a question from the audience, but you all gave some good insights around that. So, and just returning back to one of the previous questions that I wanted to ask is, I think some of you already touched on it, but let me just make it more complete. As we've all seen this year, a big shift, the complete removal of passenger or belly cargo meant that, you know, the only options were left with freighters. Some airlines converted passenger aircraft into freighter aircraft. And my question really is, how sustainable is that model? Do you see us going back to an equitable balance between belly cargo and freighter cargo? And let's start with you, Hakan. How did Turkish Airlines see those two cargo facilitators working together again in future?
Actually, we have just decreased some of the freighters which we started at the beginning of COVID because of the passenger flight, resuming some of the passenger flights to some destinations slowly. And actually, but in general, I don't expect any dramatic change on these in the upcoming 1-2 years. I mean, the demand to freighters, demand in the market. Nowadays, air cargo capacity keeps recovering slightly, as we saw in the previous IATA presentation, which made by Brendan, that nowadays air cargo capacity recovering slightly. And global cargo capacity is at its highest level since the middle of March, in my opinion. And in pre-COVID times, as Turkish Cargo, we had constantly expanded our global network, serving to 90 destinations with full freighters. That means we are still investing on freighters. So the freighter fleet is not affected by any contractions, or in contrast, depending on market development. It depends on the market development. Depending on that, it will grow by 1 to 3 units annually, adding to the existing 25 all cargo aircraft within Turkish Cargo. So it means that we will be keeping in the upcoming 1-2 years, we will be keeping both our freighter network and we are aiming to increase it 1 from 3 units, and as well as our wide-body passengers. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakan. Very, very interesting update. So, and turning to Qatar Cargo, Rob, how do you see? Are we now in a new equilibrium? What we have is what we're going to stay with, or do you see it shifting?
Well, we call it the new normal, where we're in right now. So I think we as a company find the right balance right now between operating flights where we still carry passengers, where the market allows us to operate those flights, where we cannot, and those markets are not strong enough to deploy freighters. We operate Pax freighters, and we have also markets where, in addition to freighters, we operate Pax freighters. So we have a mix of everything. For us, having a combined fleet, moving in the bellies of passenger aircraft and in the freighters is key. I mean, Qatar is a small country, a small home market, so we need freighters to feed our belly network. So they are connected with each other. The company is still growing the fleet in the coming years. So, I mean, we are well positioned with our freighter fleet. So we need to see what the market is doing. Nobody knows exactly how the market will recover, right? If there's a vaccine, it might come back. But first of all, people should trust again to fly again. So, you know, everybody, we don't have a crystal ball, but we think, you know, probably up to summer next year, passenger movements will be low. So we think that we need to be in the modus where we're in right now. As soon as passenger movements start to increase, you will see that passenger freighters gradually will disappear from the market again, because operating those flights is really expensive and you need to have the right rates to do it. As soon as a lot of belly lift comes back to the market, it's a supply and demand story. Probably, you know, the market rates will adapt to that, and that will determine whether we can operate those passenger freighters, yes or no. Same goes for operating freighters. You only operate those into markets where you can have a sustainable operation, right, which is profitable. And yeah, it will really depend how agile companies are, how they react to this. But they are, in our view, very much connected to each other, and it really depends on how passenger flows will develop going forward.
Thank you, Rob. And I guess, Chris, from your perspective, you're uniquely in the freighter business. How do you see things developing?
We believe at the moment the current situation is still extremely volatile. It is very hard to predict what the long-term outlook will be. Although we know air cargo has always been a vital component of the supply chain. But it is what Rob said already, it is a balance between supply and demand. And that is very notoriously difficult to predict. Looking at what Brendan said in the beginning, we believe that in the next 6 months there will not be a lot of change. And then the question is the vaccine coming? First of all, what will have the vaccine of an impact on air cargo? And then at a second stage, will that give the people trust again to start flying? And last but not least, on one end, will people want to fly? Do they trust to fly? But how is the business market changing? We are now here all virtual, and it works very well. And we have seen in the last 6 months conducting our business with Zoom, Teams, and all the other opportunities we have. And this is also happening in other industries. So will business travel come back in future? And will it come back as it was in the past? And that, you need to put all in the bag, all in the mix to see what the next 1 or 2 years will bring. But on the short term, 3 to 6 months, we don't believe that there will be a lot of changes.
Thank you all for those answers. I think if I could just surmise that, I think volatility, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. I think we all accept that. If or when such a vaccine comes, I guess is a big enabler for consumer confidence to get people to fly again on the one side, because before your airlines, if you have passenger aircraft will fly, you need to have demand. If there's no demand, you're not going to fly your aircraft, not a significant loss, which would be incurred. So it's incumbent on our industry to hope that it comes back with some buoyancy. All I can say from Budapest Airport's perspective is our own assessments and forecasts. Of course, cargo has been very resilient for all the reasons we've discussed. It's taken advantage to optimize the situation. Shift in commodity or product has helped facilitate that. ATMs are up significantly, largely driven by PPE, but also driven by the new infrastructure here. So I think if an airport builds, then it creates a platform to optimize that. On the passenger side, we see recovery coming in 23 or 24 or late 22 to 23 to 2019 levels, because the type of market that we are, predominantly a leisure-driven market, and people like to come to leisure-driven markets for short breaks. They did in the past, and I see that they will come in the future. But that's just a side note that I want to share with you, because it talks to my opening slide, which was talking about ownership. Our owners are very committed to this asset for another 65 years because they see it as a long-term investment. So whilst we're all on the lowest part of a curve at the moment, I think we all have invested for the long term, and I think that's going to be positive for us all going forward. So with that update from Budapest Airport, I think we're buoyant. But let me just return, if I can, to the vaccine. And I think we've had lots of discussions with several of you and your colleagues, or the whole industry is talking about vaccine distribution, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what the right temperature is. So I'd just like to ask the panelists just what their thoughts are in terms of vaccine distribution. How are you looking at it? Is it a segment that you're already geared up to support with what we know about it? We don't know everything about it. And also, do you see it as an opportunity for Budapest Airport to support you in that as well? So the question is, how do you see the vaccine logistics business for your airline? And also, are you well placed to optimize it? And if so, from Budapest? So maybe I can start with you again, Rob.
Yes. Okay, so we move quite a bit of farm already as a company, right? So that's nothing new. Moving vaccines, there are still a lot of question marks. So where will it be produced? How should it be transported? Under what conditions? What kind of equipment is available to move it? What are the handling capabilities on the ground with the various points? That depends a lot on the temp requirements of the goods. And it can go from -80 to 2+8 degrees, right? So it really depends on the samples that will go first, the raw materials, up to the real vaccines, which need to be stored very cool. We have a vaccine response team that is working on that, to have the answers to all these things. We're reaching out to our partners worldwide to be prepared. And we do the same with our partner Celebi in Hungary, right? To say, okay, we know what their requirements are. If there are flows that need to go to Hungary and they can handle it on the ground, we are very sure with our network that we can feed it into such a market, and we also have the hub infrastructure in place to do that. So we use hub and spoke, of course, via Doha, Qatar. And our hub is fully equipped to move large quantities of these goods. It really depends where it's coming from, right? And in what quantities. Some people think, okay, largest movements will be around 20 tons, maybe full flights. Do you need lower deck lift to move it? I guess there's a big need for it. Whether you need a freighter aircraft for it or not, we'll have to see, but probably as well, yeah. So I think if the temperature handling facilities are okay and can be maybe expanded, there's agility to do that based on the quantities that will be coming in, then I think you're well prepared. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Thank you, Rob. You touched on some of the variables that are not known yet in terms of the temperature. I think this is something that everyone's wrestling with, because you do need different types of infrastructure to cope with whatever the output's going to be. So, and what about from a Cargolux perspective? Do you, like Qatar Airways Cargo, have a specific team, a vaccine team, as I think you called it, Rob?
Yeah, we at Cargolux also have a team looking at this. Also looking in Luxembourg, where our hub is, of course, with the community, with truckers, with handlers, to see how we need to handle this on the ground. Because we believe, what Rob already mentioned, what we've been hearing, that it most probably needs to be moved deep frozen. So is there enough equipment? Is there enough dry ice? How will it be handled on the ground? So that are all big question marks. We are speaking to some of our bigger customers, global customers, who also have teams on this already. Certain customers are already getting capacity in so-called freezer parks, where they can store quite a bit of volume as deep frozen. So yes, we are preparing or trying to prepare, but there are a lot of unknowns, so that doesn't make it easy. We're trying to have answers for each variable which will come. And we also believe that the facilities at Budapest are well in place to transfer the vaccines. So yeah, we are working on it, but like I think everybody here, hoping to get some additional answers to the questions how this needs to be moved as soon as possible.
Thank you, Chris. Again, the freezer component is a fascinating one, which I'm presuming is also not so cheap, and that has to be reflected in all the distribution costs, etc. Now, Mr. Jung, I had the same questions for you. You touched on it earlier on. I think in terms of 8 billion doses, I think was the number you used, with 900 747s. But so I'm fairly certain that you have a vaccine team looking at how to look at it. But is there any additional comments you'd like to add?
Korean Air already make a special task force team regarding vaccine shipment, and we are ready to board vaccine. We are not sure when vaccine shipment can be released, but our headquarter team already have a communication with global pharma companies such as Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and the other company, and we are checking information. Also, last month, Korean Air headquarters already checked all conditions of all foreign airports. I mean, if vaccine is released, then Korean Air are ready to board all vaccine shipment to overseas. Lastly, our hub station is Incheon, Seoul, and we, Korean Air, already have good equipment such as frozen area for vaccine shipment, but we renovated all vaccine shipment per area, and we are checking. And regarding Budapest Airport, I think the terminal equipment is world best, because the Budapest Airport warehouse is newly developed, and the salary ground handler agent have good infrastructure regarding vaccine shipment. I checked all procedure with them, and they can check all temperature, and they can have good access to the security and so on. So if vaccine shipment is released for Eastern Europe, then Budapest Airport can be a hub. So let's check it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jung, and then thank you for the mention again about the infrastructure, and also the capabilities of Çelebi, whom we know are very progressive in this arena. And last but not least, the same question to you, Hakan, in terms of how Turkish Airlines cargo are looking at this opportunity.
Actually, as Rob mentioned earlier, there are lots of question marks at the moment, actually. And what kind of ULD is needed to handle this kind of shipments, and what kind of infrastructure will we need to handle these vaccines. And also, it is not related with the origins, but also the target destinations infrastructure is also crucial for us as an airline. And yeah, as Turkish Cargo, our special dedicated team for vaccines already started to work on it, especially in our new airport, Istanbul Airport, and we expanded our cold storage room as well. And as I said, our team at the moment working on it under the leadership of our CEO, Mr. Rodan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like everyone's ready and ready to step up as and when more information is known. I'm conscious of time. We got a few minutes left, but just before I thank everyone, I'll just go one small round and see if there's any closing comments that anyone would like to make. Let's start with you, Chris. Is there anything that you'd like to get off your chest for the audience?
No, first of all, just to thank you for being here. I think for us, for Cargolux, Budapest is a very important link in the network. And we are very pleased with the support we get from you and your team. The facilities on the ground are very good. And as that touched on earlier, our customers really are pushing for Budapest. So we've been increasing our flights in the last few weeks. Potentially we will get even more. So no, Budapest is important for us, a strategical, inner European hub, so to say. And thank you for today's invitation.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jung, any closing comments from Korean?
First of all, thank you for hot support from Budapest Airport. Now, Korean Air is operating 2 flights per week from Incheon to Budapest. But for long-term plan, Korean Air are willing to increase our capacity for Budapest because we have so many flights for Vienna, and we are willing to change some route from Vienna to Budapest. So anyway, until that time, please support Korean Air as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jung. And of course, you can rest assured we welcome the extra frequencies as and when they arrive. Hakan, any closing comments from Turkish Airlines?
Thank you very much, Kam, first of all, giving us this opportunity to be here. Just after my appointment to this new role, it is a very good opportunity indeed for myself. And regarding the Budapest, so thanks to the catchment area, Budapest Airport is a natural hub of Central Eastern Europe, in my opinion. And that is one of the main reasons that we have chosen Budapest as a regional headquarters for Eastern Europe. And also we, as Turkish Cargo, we have just upgraded our 2 freighters, existing freighters in Budapest, from 310 to 330. So that means we have at the moment 3 scheduled Airbus 330 freighters in Budapest, and this is the first step of our long-term business development. Of course, we have some more plans, and there will definitely be more improvement because Budapest gives us this opportunity. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Hakan. Thank you. And thank you for the extra capacity. And to wrap up then, Rob, any closing comments from Qatar Airways Cargo?
Yes, well, I have the opportunity to say a little bit more afterwards, right? But first of all, thanks for organizing this very nice conference. I think it's well appreciated. And it also demonstrates, that you are very active in the field and trying to, help the industry to grow. We are feeding and defeeding from about 16 countries into Budapest and out of Budapest. So for us, indeed, like for most of the others, Budapest is well positioned, to cater for the needs of Eastern Europe. And we still operate a mix of freighters and passenger freighters into Budapest. And we're happy with the performance, and we would like to thank all customers that are participating today for the support we get from you, because without you, we cannot have those flights there. So as said before, we go where the business is. And we are there to help you. And of course, you have always the fight with the traditional gateways, right, in Europe. And we always say, listen, we can do both, right? But we still value the online capacity into Budapest because it offers a quicker connection in and out. And it's also a good alternative to the bigger airports that are very often congested.
Thank you so much, Rob. So really, really useful closing comments. And just to wrap up, I just want everyone to join me in thanking Rob Veltman, Vice President Cargo Europe, Qatar Airways. He'll be coming up shortly with a presentation. Chris Nielen, Sales Vice President, Africa and Middle East of Cargolux. Hakan Lokman Yükselt, Regional Cargo Director, Eastern Europe from Turkish Airlines, who's now based in Budapest. and Mr. Hyun Min Jungot, Manager Korean Air, Budapest office for Korean Air. So it was my pleasure to host it. It was really, really useful conversation. Thank you so much. And now it gives me great pleasure on behalf of Joseph to introduce Rob, whenever you're ready to start with your presentation on behalf of Qatar Airways. So thank you.